you create a balance, with the relationships that you need for support, and then setting boundaries to say, hey, I need some me time or some time to myself?
Yes, and that is a great question. And I think that's the biggest one. When we talk about boundaries, oftentimes we're like, oh my gosh, we're going to destroy relationships, right? Like these people are not going to want to talk to us anymore. The way I like to frame boundaries, it is really telling people how to treat us.
Well, hello, everyone. You are with Urban Interest. I am your host, Angela Matthews. It is Friday. You made it through the week. Sun is out, a little bit crisp and brisk. However, it is truly a great day. Listen, we have wonderful stories for you as well as some interesting guests. Steve Bannon in contempt of Congress. You know, he was the right-hand man of the previous president. However, he's in some hot water. We'll tell you about that as well. New York activists confronting Black-on-Black crime. Come on now. It's about time that we step up and confront this monster that has been wreaking havoc in our communities for far too long. And then we're also going to talk about the Great Resignation. What is that about? Have we ever seen a time like this? I don't think so. And then we're going to have the guests that are going to come with us and talk about self-care and some other things. So stay put, stay connected. We will be right back.
Movies, documentaries, TV shows, local, national, world news, history, and culture. No network can tell your story better than UIN because we are you. With us, you can become more than just a consumer. You become a keeper of the culture and empowered. Go to uintv.net, click on a channel to support and subscribe today. Do it now.
All right, we're going to get into our stories, but before we do that, I want to remind you that November 2nd is Election Day. Make sure that you have registered to vote. Make sure that you know the platform, the agenda of those who are running for elected offices, because this is a very important election. The House of Representatives voted to hold Trump ally Steve Bannon in contempt of Congress after Bannon failed to comply with a subpoena to testify before them. They want to know what he heard and possibly was he a part of the January 6th insurrection. We have this report from NBC News.
Yeas are 229.
Tonight, 9 Republicans joining with every Democrat to hold Steve Bannon in contempt of Congress.
You cannot blow off a subpoena in America.
We know what this is really about. This is about getting at President Trump.
Referring the former top Trump advisor to the Department of Justice for possible prosecution.
The Department of Justice will do what it always does in such circumstances. It will apply the facts and the law and make a decision consistent with the principles of prosecution.
Bannon had refused to engage with the committee investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol, despite a subpoena. In letters to the committee, Bannon's attorney argued he is legally unable to comply and had been instructed not to provide documents or testimony by Mr. Trump, citing executive privilege. Some lawmakers believe Bannon had specific knowledge of the planning of the attack.
He knew something. We want to know that information, who helped finance anything along that line.
Today's vote forcing Republicans to choose between supporting Congress's power to investigate or the former president.
Why is it important that Republicans vote to hold him in contempt?
You would think that if they take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, they would vote for the system of checks and balances.
No, they're issuing an invalid subpoena. Issuing an invalid subpoena weakens our power, not if somebody votes against it.
So Republicans argue that at the time of the attack on the Capitol, Steve Bannon was a private citizen and should not have to answer to Congress. I don't know about you, but when I'm served a subpoena to come to court, I have no option but to show up, or else I'm going to be arrested. So I don't even know why people who didn't show up to court, who were subpoenaed, and there was numerous of those in the Republican Party, I don't even know why they were not hauled off to court then. Anywho, we will keep you abreast of this story. Community activists in New York are confronting Black on Black crime by calling for a special kind of a boycott. They hoped that residents will get behind this. So let's take a listen as to what they're talking about.
Boycott Black murder! Boycott Black murder!
Victims of gun violence, the formerly incarcerated, and those just tired of the endless bloodshed gathered in front of the Barclays Center Saturday, coming together to launch a campaign called Boycott Black Murder.
The community is tired. We are emotionally drained. We experienced so much trauma over the years.
Alarmed by the rise in children getting killed by guns, a coalition of community advocacy groups gathered to announce a new partnership between violence interrupters, elected officials, and families to saturate the most impacted communities and demand support from local businesses as well as social media platforms.
I want to utilize those relationships to advocate for this work, to promote this work. The same way you would promote a Wu-Tang Clan tour, we're going to promote Boycott Black Murder's tour. We're going on a tour to each an individual project.
According to the NYPD, there's been at least 1,262 shootings this year, with 1,517 victims.
My goodness, my goodness. Community activists say less funding should be given to police and more to community advocacy groups who are working to address the root cause of crime. Millions of people are quitting their jobs. Can you believe it? While millions of others are leaving open positions unfilled, making it a workers' market in America. I cannot even believe this. Let's take a look at this particular story.
This week, 10,000 workers at agriculture equipment manufacturer Deere & Company made their voices heard.
The cheap labor bubble is finally busted.
John Deere says it's committed to resolve the dispute with a favorable outcome for their employees. It's the first strike for the United Auto Workers Union in 35 years, and just the latest in a string of labor actions across the country. More than 24,000 employees at healthcare provider Kaiser Permanente have voted to authorize a strike. Food giant Nabisco recently agreed to terms with its employees as more than 1,000 workers at cereal maker Kellogg began their own strike. With more disputes looming across other industries, some are calling this month Striketober.
Our future is not for sale.
Demands across the board are similar: better wages, better and safer working conditions.
We are seeing employers break out the same playbook where they're trying to offer bonuses or new perks to try to attract workers.
All right, now while this is happening, the labor market is experiencing another phenomenon. It's called the Great Resignation. Have you ever seen this before? I have not. Normally people are clamming for jobs, but now you see hiring being posted, job postings of I'm hiring, we're hiring, posted all over the place. And yet businesses are closing still at times of like 6 and 7 p.m. when they would normally be open to maybe 11, 12, 1 or 2. We will keep you abreast of this story. When will the economy rev back up truly? Who knows? We're going to take a quick break and then we'll come back and talk to a young woman with regards to self-care, especially the self-care for Black women. We'll be right back.
911, what's your emergency? Oh my God, a child just died!
Signal 13 involving a child, the medicine route.
It is time to put the guns down. We've had enough. My future.
My future.
My future. Our futures are in your hands.
Adults, put the guns down.
When I play, sleep.
Walk to school.
Visit my friends. I want to feel safe.
It's time. Time to end gun violence.
Our lives depend on.
Adults, this is not a request.
We demand that you protect us. Put the guns down. We have hopes. Dreams.
Goals. Don't let a split second of anger with someone else take away my entire lifetime.
Help us live. Help us thrive.
Help us build a better future.
All right, everyone, you are still with Urban Interests. You know, self-care is so important right now. This trauma that we've been through, self-care is absolutely necessary. And so we have a native Detroiter who's going to come and speak with us, having 6 years as a mental health therapist. We want to welcome to Urban Interests, Miss Alandra Chuney with us, and we're going to talk about this self-care. And also, after feeling the void of a safe space and place for women to speak, especially Black women, she discussed and has opened something that's called the Sisters Couch. I want to know what that's about. So I want to bring Alandra into the room. Hey, Alandra.
Hello, how are you?
I am well. But again, I always say everything that's happening makes me want to holler, and makes me want to throw up my hands, because it is so much. And as Black women, we are carrying a whole lot.
Yes, we are. And actually what you said, you talked about, you opened up with the Sisters Couch. I started the Sisters Couch because I realized that Black women, we were carrying a lot, but we didn't have an open space to talk about it. So I went to school to be a mental health therapist. I started my journey working with young people. Then I went to private practice. And then I also was seeing my own therapist. And I realized, like, wait a minute, Black women, we don't really talk about this openly because there's a stigma. So the Sisters Couch was created back in, I want to say 2017, 18. And we discussed self-care, self-preservation, and how to navigate through this world, especially right now, trauma and just so much going on right now. So, yeah.
You know, this is, and wait a minute. So when I look at you, I'm like, she's all of what, 2021. However, that's what self-care does. It gives, I would say, vibrancy and youthfulness, because people are always trying to find a fountain of youth. But the fountain of youth is us taking care of ourselves. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I wish I was all of 2021. That was almost 10, 11 years ago. Yes, so we, like you said, that is a fountain of youth. And actually, to be completely honest, I've had to work on that myself. Like, the reason I look so well today is because I got sleep. So I realized, like, in this journey, one thing we talk about when it comes to self-care, I like to say self-preservation, because when we think about self-care, oftentimes we think about, look, get my hair done. Yes, that is a form of self-care. My nails done. I'm gonna do all of that. But it's actually deeper than that. It's like taking care of our mental health, making sure we have boundaries in place, making sure we are getting sleep, making sure we are, like, doing the things that help us preserve our mental capacity. So I like to say self-preservation.
Okay, now look, Alandra, you just said something about setting boundaries, right? And so how can that really be possible, especially with us, because we bring home the bacon, we fry it up in the pan, and we're taking care of the kids, and we're folding the laundry. I mean, we're multitasking predominantly all the time. And so one would say, well, hey, you need those close relationships. So how can you create a balance, you know, with the relationships that you need for support, and then setting boundaries to say, hey, I need some me time or some time to myself?
Yes, and that is a great question. And I think that's the biggest one. When we talk about boundaries, oftentimes we're like, oh my gosh, we're going to destroy relationships, right? Like, these people are not going to want to talk to us anymore. The way I like to frame boundaries, it is really telling people how to treat us. Because when we don't have boundaries, oftentimes what happens is like, uh-oh, you feel like somebody is doing you wrong. So say, for example, it's like, why is she calling me at 11 o'clock? Knowing this is something simple. Why is she calling me at 11 o'clock? Knowing I'm asleep right now. This is my personal time. But with boundaries, did you tell her that you shouldn't be calling at 11 o'clock? Are you answering the phone? So setting boundaries is really practicing and letting people know how you want to be treated. I like to use, the first thing I like to start off with is literally just like setting work boundaries, which is the hardest one for most of us. So the smallest boundary is I start at 9, and I know everybody doesn't work at 9 to 5, and I end at 5. So making sure you're honoring that. So I think when we think about boundaries, oftentimes it's like, I'm gonna lose my support system. But what I like to say is telling people how to treat you. And in turn, if a person has a problem with that boundary, maybe they aren't the best person for your support system, which is so much harder, easier to say than done. But it's really, how can I teach people how to treat me so I won't have this resentment, or I won't have these ugly feelings or uncomfortable feelings inside?
Now I'm gonna go here for a second. You got your girlfriend who calls you, say, you know what? By the 11 o'clock, girl, I am just completely, girl, whatever. Listen. And then they just continue to, to keep talking. So setting those boundaries can be a little bit challenging. And I say that is because I've experienced that, right? Mm-hmm. So what I will do is I'll just get real quiet. And my silence is deafening. They say, oh my God, are you still there? Mm-hmm. I'm still here. And then they get it, that it clicks that, oh, she's tired. She just came from California and time zone is different and she ain't quite with it. Yeah. So I do agree with the boundaries. So tell us, how else can we create that balance with the boundaries when people will push past those boundaries?
One thing I like to practice, and when I first started working on like setting my boundaries, I got called selfish a lot. Like, Alandra, oh my God, you're just selfish. It's like, yeah, and that really hurt my feelings because it's like, no, I don't want to be seen as selfish. But I think one thing we have to do is be firm in our boundaries. So like you said, that friend who's calling at 11 and going and talking and talking and talking. And sometimes we are that friend too. We don't respect people's boundaries. And it's like, she just told me. And I think it's really like practicing, like you might not be able to answer the phone at 11 o'clock. So it's like, I'm not even gonna call Angela at 11 because I know she is not going to answer the phone. So it's literally, if it's something that you don't want to happen in your space, it's like, I have to practice that. And over time, they will get the picture like, my family knows I am not cooking. I know that's like so abstract, but for holidays, it's like, hey, Alandra, what are you cooking? I'm not cooking. I'll show up and I'll bring decorations. But because we've had that conversation over the course, like, this is my boundary. This is what I practice. They also know when I mean no in regards to, hey, I'm not traveling because I don't feel comfortable with my 2-year-old. They're like, she's not coming. So it's really being consistent. I think that's the big part. And I will wholeheartedly admit, it is so hard at first. It's like, but I need to answer the phone because they're calling me and it might be something important. And I like to say, well, if it's important, they can leave a voicemail, they can text you. So it's really being firm and communicating effectively. Those are the two big things, being firm and communicating effectively.
Okay. So let's talk about seasons. Seasons are changing. The days are getting shorter. Sunlight is, disappearing around about 7 o'clock now. And then as November comes in, I think by the Thanksgiving holiday, you fall backwards, I do believe. Yes. And so we're going to lose an hour of sunlight. So how is it that we can practice a self-care, because of seasonal depression that comes upon people? You wake up in the dark. By the time you go, you only have a certain amount of time, 9 to 5 or 9 to 4. In the dark. Late November, December, and then it seems like we're always in the darkness. So how can we practice that self-care in this particular seasonal change?
That is a very important question and topic. And I think the first thing we need to do if we are experiencing that is actually recognize the signs. Because some of us, we don't realize like, hey, I'm kind of getting the winter blues, or I'm dealing with some seasonal affective disorder, but they might just be thinking this is like something normal for them. So first is realizing like, hey, I'm feeling sad a bit more often. I'm feeling down. I'm feeling withdrawn. My appetite isn't up. I don't want to do things I used to do. I want to be isolated. My mood is changing. So recognizing like, hey, I am feeling all of these emotions and this is not how I typically feel. So the first part is actually understanding that. The other thing I like to say to do is to make sure, and this one is not my favorite thing, I'm not the best at doing it, is to make sure you get your body moving. We know that when we exercise, when we move our bodies, we're releasing those happy chemicals in our brain. And we know that we get those too from the sunlight. So another thing is up your intake of vitamin D. Vitamin D is what also regulates our moods. It helps us to feel those happy emotions. So actually get more vitamin D. Other things we can do is, and this is so hard in COVID times, is have a support system, a social life, which is so hard. It could be, hey, I'm checking in with my family on FaceTime. I'm doing something to make sure you are still getting that connection. And also recognize when you are becoming burnt out, because we will keep going and going and going and not recognize that we are burnt out, tired, and we're also not getting that sunlight, that vitamin D, and those happy chemicals are not connecting in our brain. So that dopamine. So yeah.
Okay. What and sleep? I did. You did mention sleep. You said, I feel, I'm refreshed today because I've gotten sleep. And so with us as women being multitaskers, what is about a good amount of sleep, that we should get per night? I know the study says get 8 hours.
Yeah.
But for a multitasker, someone like yourself who's running a business, you have a family, what is truly the adequate amount of sleep?
That is a good question, and it does depend on the person. So I know they say for some individuals 5 hours of sleep. What you want to aim for is actually getting in that REM cycle of sleep. So that's that deep sleep where your brain can actually reset. For me, it used to be 8 hours, but now it's like if I get a good 6 hours and I've gotten that deep sleep, that REM sleep where my body is resting, I'm dreaming, then I am set. So it's between 5 to 8 hours, but it wholeheartedly depends on the person. It's more so about the quality of sleep that you're getting. So are you interrupted? Are you comfortable? How deep is your sleep? Rather than the duration of your sleep. So it's up to you and how your body typically operates.
Okay. Now, there's something called a cat nap.
And those are effective too. So the 15-minute one is like, oh yes, so those work magic. So yes, cat naps are great. And what they say with cat naps and short naps, you don't want to get it to go too long. So between that 15 to 30-minute time frame is like, I just get to refresh, I get to reset my brain. That's usually good for a cat nap.
Okay, you're right about that, because if I do a cat nap, it's comatose time. I'll sleep I go into that other realm and then I'm out for a long time. I call it comatose because it's more than like 2 hours, So listen, Alandra, you do a lot. You are a working woman, you are a parent, partners, spouses, maintaining this self-care in this particular space with each other. What are your thoughts about that, or some advice with that particular arena, that particular dynamic?
So that dynamic has actually been a challenging one, I think, because we are with my partner, spouse, and family, because we are in the same house, and it's like, you need to figure out how to get space for one another. So I know one thing my husband and I do, we make sure that he enjoys playing golf. So he'll be like, hey, I just need to get outside today. I'm going to go golf. And I'll like, all right, I have our little one today. I'm an extrovert. I need to be around people. So I like spending time with my friends. So I'll be like, hey, I'm meeting up with my 2 closest friends, and we do practice that. We also make sure that in our house, I know my office is located in the back. So I practice like trying to just have my office, our backspace as like our kid-free space, because if you have a family, you feel like you are just, the house is taken over by the little one. So we also practice setting boundaries in the backspace back here. Like, this is where we go to retreat. This is where I go to work. And also trying to make time for one another. This is so hard as well. We try to do, I know everybody does not have the capacity or the privilege to do this. We might take a day off while she's in daycare to actually sit and spend time with each other and get some things done, because you're right, it is important to make sure you are practicing self-care outside of each other, because that can be overwhelming too. And I know during the pandemic, they also talked about how a lot of relationships are being destroyed. Like, before, think about it. We were able to go with our friends to talk about stuff, go to work to talk about stuff, come back and tell your partner. Now it's like, I see you all the time. You're my coworker. Like, this is all we're doing. I need some space from you.
Would you go in the other room, please, sir?
Right. So I think that is a good point you brought up, like finding that balance with you and your family and your partner.
Oh my goodness. I love this conversation because I know in audience, I know that we're laughing, but laughter is good medicine as well.
Yes.
You know, having the ability to smile does release and does something. I know it does for me. And so Alandra, how about women who are suffering from clinical depression? You are a mental health therapist. During the pandemic, I'm sure that heightened to a different level. You weren't able to see them in the office and had to do these Zoom therapy sessions. Talk a little bit about that.
So I know with clinical depression, the biggest part is that individuals go into isolation when you are depressed. And then you add on this pandemic and it's like, alrighty, it's already harder to see your loved ones or the people who bring you joy. So one thing I know that even talking with my own therapist, she's been checking in like, hey, make sure you are looking for these signs and don't be afraid if you need some type of medication to have medication, because I think there's still a huge stigma attached to taking any type of medication related to mental illness. But when I talk about mental illness, one thing I like to say is if you were a patient that was diagnosed with cancer, you're going to do anything to save your life, right? You're going to go get those chemo treatments, although it is making you super tired. And what I like to say with depression, and because this is also one of my favorite subjects, also with postpartum depression, that is also a silent killer. So if you want to save your life and you want to save your mental health, it is important that if you feel like you need medication, you talk to a professional, you get the medication. And another thing, I'm not a psychiatrist, so I don't give medication. I'm not telling you to take medication, but also think about vitamins. I know I've been doing a vitamin regimen that has been helping me out. I've been taking magnesium, vitamin D, vitamin B6, because sometimes we oftentimes miss that there could be some lower levels in our body. So the first thing is talk to your therapist, like, hey, I'm feeling this, and the therapist should assess, like, hey, maybe we might want to get you some medication, and your primary care physician can do that as well. The other thing is vitamins. Make sure you're taking those vitamins. That is a huge thing, and try to get out when sunlight is out. And with depression, another thing is to remember hopelessness is common. So one thing we like to practice is making sure you have a safety plan. Who is your support group? Who knows this about you? That's another thing we talk about too. And along with depression, not even just clinical depression, we are dealing with a lot of grief right now. And I don't think people are realizing that. And it's not grief to people passing, but we've been in this pandemic for almost 2 years. We are grieving, and grief comes in waves. We're grieving the way that we used to interact. We're grieving the way that we were able to celebrate. We're grieving relationships. We're grieving our jobs. We're grieving so much that is hard to recognize. Am I going through grief right now, or am I going through depression right now? So it's important to actually sit with a therapist and talk about, is this grief? And grief can lead to depression as well. And work through those feelings, because it is super challenging right now, super challenging.
Thank you so much for mentioning the grieving and the way that you labeled it out. I never really even thought about that, to be honest with you. So much, you're right. And some people I don't know, but we are at over 700,000 people who have died from COVID and or COVID complications. Instantly, you know, people are long-term COVID survivors. A lot is going on, and society is saying, hey, you need to snap back now because it's just time. But as you said, man, you labeled that so well. Thank you for just putting it out like that, those different areas that people are grieving. Folk will not come into 2022 with folk that they've been with in 2021. And then folk did not come into 2021 with people that they were with in 2020. So you're right about that. So how critical is it for other women, and especially us Black women, to hear about other stories of what people may be experiencing?
I think one thing that has helped me through this pandemic and being a new mom is hearing other people's stories, because what we oftentimes do, because we aren't as connected, is we think we're the only ones going through this. We think we're isolated. We think that this is only affecting us. But when you get in these communities and you recognize, like, hey, this is affecting them too, I am not losing my mind. Like, this is normal. Like, we are going through a hard time. And I think you hit on a great point too, is that they expect us to keep going and going. And it's like, with any type of trauma, with any type of mental health challenges, you need to sit and process. We haven't had the ability to do that. A lot of us are operating on autopilot. So I think it's important to get in those communities where we can talk about this like, yes, because we know that when we hear from each other and we take away that isolation, it makes us feel like, hey, this is normal for right now. This is normal for what's happening right now. And when we talk about that too, we also have to talk about our coping skills. And this is just my personal experience. The way we cope before, we can't cope that same way. So that's also allowing us to have some challenges. I know before it's like, if I was having a bad day, I'm going to go out. I'm just going to find somebody to connect with. Now it's like, I have to plan differently. Are we practicing safety protocols? Am I going to get sick? Oh my goodness, what's going on? So we can't even cope the same way we used to cope. We're on autopilot and we're not even processing all of this. So this is causing a lot of grief, anxiety, and depression. So yeah.
Oh my goodness. Come on now, Alandra, you talking this morning, honey. You are talking with regards to, we don't cope the same way that we did, you know, before the pandemic, and all of this has happened. And my forever, and possibly your forever first lady, said at some particular segment, even in 2020 somewhere, she said, suffering from low grade depression. What are the signs of low grade depression?
That is a great question, because we often think when someone's depressed, they are sitting in the bed, they're not doing anything. Low grade depression is like, you realize I'm losing motivation. Like nothing, the things I used to enjoy, they are not bringing me joy anymore. And I can just use my story, for example, like the Sister's Couch, that was my baby. And it was like, I am not interested in this anymore. Like I can't do this anymore. So I'm not motivated, but I'm still showing up. I feel like I'm on autopilot. I feel like I'm just moving, but everything is a blur. You know, like in the movies where it's like, you're just there, but everything is going on around you. It's like, I'm here, but I'm not present. Another thing is your appetite is like, I'm not eating the way I used to. I'm losing weight. I'm gaining weight. So thinking about the way you're eating, you're sleeping. Like I said, the quality of sleep, I'm sleeping, but it's not quality sleep. Either I'm getting up, either I'm sleeping, I'm not rested. And crying is healthy. Like I like to say, crying is the way we just clear our bodies out, but also it's like, I am triggered and I don't understand where this uncontrollable crying is coming from. That could be low grade depression. You're still showing up, you're still there, but you're not motivated, you're not happy. Things are just moving in slow motion. That's the best way to put it in terms that we all can understand.
What about for, you know, being angry? You know, you get angry real quick, or you know, you're emotional and you get frustrated.
Yes, anger. I think a lot of people don't realize that anger and frustration, and I know especially for young people, is a sign of depression. So it's like, wait a minute, I am snapping at my family and this is not what I typically do. I am yelling at my kids. I am being short with my clients. I am just an angry person walking around, and oftentimes we get labeled an angry Black woman. But it's like, no, I am really dealing with like some type of depression. I might be dealing with seasonal depression. It might be major depression, but you have to think about the duration that is happening. You have to think about the symptoms that you have. Anger is a big one. And another one is a huge one, is our body. We don't realize that back pain, neck pain, stomach aches, headaches, like our body also tells us when we are dealing with depression and stress. I know for me, if I don't get sleep, if I am like feeling a little bit uneasy, headaches are a telltale sign, like, uh-oh, I am off. So paying attention to your body, like my back hurts. I have a tight chest and I'm not sure why. So also paying attention to that.
Well, that is really, really good. I always say that for me, I have to get it out because it builds up. So whether it's walking or some type of stretching, or, you know, getting into my, you know, my little home makeshift sauna, is that I have to get it out. It has to get out of my body. And so I know with me, when I guess I'm going into low grade depression, I get I'm touchy. It's like, you know, it's a little snappy. It's like, that is not even me. Pretty patient person, pretty happy-go-lucky. So you're absolutely right. You have to be aware of cognitively what's going on, and then what is your body telling you as well. Alandra, what are some resources for people who are experiencing maybe some low-grade depression, some clinical depression? This stuff is going on and they need some resources. What would be your take on that?
So I know if you are looking for a therapist, Therapy for Black Girls, they do have the website. They have a list of Black therapists around the United States. We also have on the Sisters Couch website, we also have a list of Black therapists who have actually been vetted by the Sisters Couch. Detroit Wayne County Community Health, I know they offer therapeutic services at a sliding scale fee if you cannot afford, or if you don't have insurance, they do offer therapeutic services. Another website that you can, not website, but a line, the suicide hotline number, which let me find and put it in the chat box, you can share it. But the suicide hotline number is another great resource for us to use for those who may be feeling any type of like suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideations, because that's another thing we don't talk about in a Black community. Like suicide is real. So I'll put that in the chat and you can share it later with the audience. So those are three places where you can go to therapy. I always advocate for therapy because we like to use our friends as our therapists, our family as our therapists. And it's like, no, they might not have the capacity to take that on either. You want to make sure that you are seeing someone who can clinically diagnose you if you need to be diagnosed.
Because our friends will say, girl, here, get you some red wine or some white wine, kick up your heels, and there'd be some other, words that goes with that. Yeah. But normally, or someone, and you know what, Alandra, this is something, this is a pet peeve of mine, is when people say, just suck it up, it'll pass. Or they'll say, girl, what's wrong with you?
Yes.
This ain't you. Come on, chop it up, suck it up. Or they'll tell the guys, man up. But people need help.
Yes, that is a big one we talk about too. What I like to say is empathy and grace. That is one thing I am practicing right now. We all should be practicing because no one should be telling you what is a big deal and what is not a big deal. We all have different challenges. And I also say this to you, like, you should not compare what you're going to anyone else because all of our stories are different. And I think we are just so numb to receiving mental health services and numb to our emotions because we're taught to suck it up. But like you said, Angela, you need to get it out of you. So we need to talk about this, we need to process it, and we don't need our feelings to be minimized. And oftentimes that causes us to have that internal dialogue with ourselves and make ourselves worse. So you are right. We need to be empathetic with one another. Like if you can't say, oh, yeah, girl, you can sit and have an emotion that you felt before and just be empathetic. Like, I hear you. That has to be hard. That's all. Sometimes that's all some people need. So yes, you are right. Like we have a huge problem in the Black community, especially with our men. Like, suck it up. You don't need to feel those emotions. So yeah, thank you for touching on that too.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just add to what you just said with regards to allowing ourselves to be transparent. There are times I'll call, I have a couple of people that I can call and I'll say, listen, I'm feeling a certain type of way. I don't know what it is. I don't have a pulse or finger on it. So I'm just calling you, whether it's for conversation or prayer. And then in just walking it out, I still may not know what it is, having a finger on it, but being able, as to release it and get it out, something out. As opposed to try to figure out what is wrong with me. I stopped doing that. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm just having a day. And that's all there is. And that's my transparency. And that is my truth. I do not have to figure it out right then and there.
Yes. Yes. That is something my therapist says too. I see a therapist. I believe all therapists need a therapist. She's like, Alandra, why do you need to figure out why? This is what's happening right now. Sit with it, go through it, and feel it. Because what we do, we try to think about it. We try to push it away, but it's like, I might just need to feel this right now, and it might just show up later. So yes, that is 100%. I just need to figure out, I just need to sit and talk and process it and just get it out of me. And another thing is journaling, writing things down. That is a huge part. There is power in writing stuff down, like just getting it out, seeing it on paper, like, okay, I released that. I can look at it later. I can process this later, but having somewhere to put those tough and big emotions.
Mm-hmm. And then also on your sister's couch, and I know we gotta, wrap up and let you go in a minute. Can the sisters vocalize in whatever their capacity is, whatever it is?
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to pretty it up, have to fluff it up and present it in this particular circle or conversation. Can they just say what they want to say, how they need to say it?
Yes, and I think that is the beauty. And one of the things I try to do with mental health, because we try to butter stuff up, right? We try to just make it sound so intellectual. It's like, no, I'm just having a horrible day. Like almost stuff just sucks right now.
Yeah.
So yes, we create a space where you can show up and like, this is how I'm feeling. Like I am not feeling. And I think the biggest thing is also in that space, we try to create language for what you're feeling, because sometimes we don't even have the language. We don't even know what the words are that we're feeling because we don't know it. So yes, you can show up, tell me how you feel, tell us how you feel, and we are all there. I think prior to the pandemic, that was one of the beauties of having a space. Women just showed up authentically, and I try to create that type of space. Like I am not going to talk. I always leave. I'm not talking at you. I am literally guiding you through this space because this is you know you better than anybody else. I'm just walking you through this space. So yeah, show up how you want to show up.
And may have some sweet words. But that's you showing up authentically. Like, look, I'm not trying to pretty this up. This is how I feel. Take it or leave it. And sometimes I'll tell my friends, I'll say, look, I know what the word of God says. I ain't trying to hear that right now.
Right.
I'm feeling. So listen, Miss Alandra, totally appreciate you. What do you have coming up that our audience can connect with you with?
I am having our first in-person event since the pandemic where we'll be practicing all safety protocol, and it's called Let's Talk About Black Women and Being Selfish, because selfish has always been known as a bad word. So during that time, we're going to go into how to set boundaries explicitly. We're going to create a mood board with one of my favorite people, Kylie Slow of the Dream Building Company, and we're also going to do a plan for if we do have feelings related to seasonal affective disorder or the winter blues. So it'll be taking place on November 20th. Yeah, and
Okay. So listen, definitely get us, if you've got a flyer or something or some information, definitely get us that, because we definitely want to support you. And that's so important. It's before the holidays. Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's is coming up. It's so much, it's up on us. And I know people are like, please don't talk about that. But it is true. It is true. It's here, and people are still dealing with situations and issues. Like they say, they're still grieving.
I don't think people realize like holidays, even without the pandemic, they trigger so much in us, triggers so much. And it's just crazy, like just going into it, like trying to be careful. So yes, holidays are approaching.
Yeah. And I just heard it on the news about, the cargo is stuck out on the Pacific Ocean and on docks, and people are crazy. Like, I can't get my Christmas present. I'm like, look, you can save so much money. Be thankful for the family that you can sit and talk with, your kids, your parents, your grandparents and aunts, because this is going to be a brutal holiday season for some people. And it's going to conjure up, because this is going to be a first.
Yes, for a lot
of people. So Miss Alandra Chuney, licensed, you have a master's in social work, a licensed mental health therapist. Thank you so much for being with us. That sister couch, much needed, very amazing.
Thank you.
So thank you, keep that up. We got to come out of this together. And thank you for sharing your truth about you, even yourself. You have a therapist that you see, and I'm thinking the therapist has a therapist, and so on and so forth, to keep this chain of mental health and self-care on the radar and what we need to do. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and have a good day.
All right, you too.
Bye.
Everyone, that's Miss Alandra Chuney. You need to connect with her. Do you have Instagram before you go? Do you have Instagram or Facebook or anything?
I do. I have Instagram is the sisters_couch. And then my Facebook is just the Sisters Couch. So yeah.
All right. Much love to you, my darling. Have a great day. We'll talk with you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, everyone. That was a great segment with Miss Alandra Chuney. Listen, we are going to come back after these commercial breaks, and then we'll wrap up this segment of Urban Interest. Stay put.
Today, we bring you the first part of our global broadcast exclusive conversation.
The streets of Tahrir have once again been filled.
Key issues here at the United Nations Climate Change Conference remain unresolved.
Police are saying the protesters to move further and further away.
I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!
All right, everyone. What an interesting segment of Urban Interest. We talked about Trump's right-hand person, Steve Bannon, being held in contempt of Congress. Somebody needs to be held accountable for the mayhem that happened in that administration. And now we're still reeling with the effects and the impact of that. And it hasn't even been a year yet under the new administration. And people want Biden to work a miracle. Well, miracle, that's not going to happen. We all need to come together and pull together in this. And then also we talked about activists in New York City are just tired of the Black on Black crime, and they're doing something about it, raising their voices, going from community to community, even city to city and state to state. So if they happen to come to your area, then why don't you join them and lift your voice against this Black on Black crime? It is time. Our children are dying by the droves, just needlessly, from gun violence and some other things. And then the great resignation, I kind of like that word, the great resignation. Folks are quitting their jobs. Folks are going on strikes. People are leaving jobs opened and unfilled. This is a critical time in our economy. Plenty of jobs, but not plenty of people taking those jobs. We need to keep our eye on this. And then self-care is so very important. You heard it from our licensed therapist, Ms. Alandra Chuney. Talk with her. Go to those websites. The Sisters Couch. There is help for us women. Listen, stay connected to us at urban.interest, or on our YouTube page, Detroit, DETITIPTV.com. That's DETIPTV.com. We would love for you to stay connected with us. Come on back on Monday. Have a great weekend. I'm Angela, your host for Urban Interest. Talk to you later.